Okay, so once again, I'll introduce Riza and Natalie Gonzalez, and they're going to say a little bit about themselves, their background, sort of how they got to Remake, and then they're going to take us through some really great tools for how we can all build our own communities and sort of utilize what Remake has to offer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Riza. Like Julie said, thank you so much for spending the next hour with us. So I first joined Remake in late 2019 as an ambassador, right when Remake was piloting the new community organizer program in New York City, DC, and Atlanta. And I applied to be an ambassador or a community organizer for DC, and here I am. I learned about Remake through a mentor of mine, and I was drawn to the organization because I felt lonely in my sustainable fashion journey, and I wanted to meet other advocates and people who were learning about this important topic like me. My background is in HR, and I have worked in healthcare for more than 8 years. I studied biopsychology and Spanish at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I've been interested in community health and well-being for, since I could remember as a child. Fashion has also been important to me. I first started being interested in fashion when I fell in love with like the beautiful garments that actresses would wear in like old Hollywood films. And I really like fashion history as well. In 2012, I learned about fast fashion and the unethical labor practices in the garment factories at a fair trade conference. But like even then, I only understood a piece of the problem. So it was 5 years ago when I went to a pop-up event in DC, and I met a local fashion designer, and she explained to me like what her collection was. She told me what like a small like collection is and what like a capsule wardrobe is. And I think just having that one-on-one connection with somebody who was like me and who lived in my community really helped me reflect on my consumption habits. And like it made me want to watch The True Cost, and it inspired me to like do what she did, like, and share like more about sustainable fashion with others in my community.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie. I am, as mentioned, a co-community organizer with Riza for the Washington, D.C. area. I am originally from California, but have been in DC for about 7 years now. I went to American University in DC, which is what brought me here. And I studied international relations. So during college, I had some exposure to the human rights issues within fast fashion, but besides just learning about it through a sustainability course I took, I didn't really know that much about it. I knew that, there were issues with fast fashion, but it wasn't until I joined Remake in August of 2020 that I really learned a lot more about the different ways that it intersects with labor rights and environmental rights. And I joined Remake basically because I was looking for community during the pandemic. Everything was virtual. I felt really unfulfilled just being at home all the time and wanted some way to volunteer virtually. And I came across Remake really just through a Google search. And I found them, and I thought they were such a cool organization, and they had the ambassador program that I thought was so cool. So I joined in August of 2020, and that's when I met Riza and Victoria, who was the community organizer before me. And they were so nice and so helpful in helping me kind of get involved, start planning my own events, things like that. And so then when Victoria left DC, I applied to be the co-community organizer with Riza in September of 2021. And that is when I became community organizer and got really involved. And it's just been a great experience being able to host events, to learn more, to educate myself and others about a lot of important issues within fast fashion. So I'm really excited for tonight and to share with you some of the things that Riza and I've learned over the past years hosting events and trying to build community. So yeah, I think we're going to get started. So I'm just, one thing I want to mention before we start, we're also doing a raffle, as we mentioned in the Eventbrite. So we're raffling off a gift card from All for Ramon, which is a Los Angeles-based sustainable fashion company that was founded by two Latina sisters who are on a mission to create modern, effortless, essential wear on repeat that is sustainable and ethical. So we're going to just be doing a random number generator and picking a winner through that. So we'll announce that at the end of the workshop. So stay tuned for that. And so now we're gonna start the presentation. So the first slide we have here, we have a few slides prepared for tonight. We just wanted to start out first with all these photos. So these are events that we've attended, that we've hosted. So as you can see in the both virtual and in person, both with different types of audiences, different intentions, which we'll get into today. But in the top left corner, the sunset picture, that was one of our first in-person events we had in DC. It was just with ambassadors, and we made vision boards, which you can see in one of those photos. The photo with Laurel holding the bag is a clothing swap we hosted. The photo below that is Remake's book club, where we read Consumed, that I attended and Risa helped host and contribute to. And then the top right hand corner was a fundraiser happy hour that we did during the Give Your Values month. And then the bottom right hand is the Philadelphia meetup that we got to attend with Philadelphia ambassadors. I think a few of them are on the call. So that was really awesome. So it was just a great way to get involved and both hosting and attending different Remake events. So now I'm going to hand it over to Risa, who's going to go through our agenda for this evening.
Thanks, Natalie. So I'll just walk you through our agenda real quick. We'll begin by collectively answering some reflection questions about who makes up our communities and what our intentions are as Remake ambassadors. And we have a really nice intimate group, so I think this will be a nice part of the workshop. We will explore some ways you can get connected with others who share your values. Natalie and I know that, especially at the beginning of this journey or at the beginning of this advocacy in our own communities, it can really feel lonely in this space. And we're going to draw from our personal experience to share what we've learned about making connections, building relationships, and inviting people into the sustainable and ethical fashion movement through events. And when you're ready to plan an event, we'll walk you through best practices, event resources, and tips for how you can get organized with coordination and outreach. And finally, we will share examples of past events that the Remake DC Hub has hosted. There will also be time for questions and answers at the end. So if you haven't already, we encourage you to grab a pen and paper. I know I like to take notes while I'm attending workshops, and also if I plan to participate or have a question, I'll save them for when I'm ready. So we'll get started. All right, so first, what is your intention? Each of us has a story. We all come from different walks of life, a series of moments and encounters that have led us to where we are in this space today together. So by hosting different types of events, we are able to engage diverse groups of audiences, and we will dive into these groups further over the next several slides. But to start, we'd like to think through these reflection questions. These are questions that Natalie and I consistently ask ourselves. We try to meet every other week or monthly just to kind of talk about our ideas for engaging our community in DC. So we're always kind of thinking through these questions informally or casually. But if anyone would like to share their response to a question that resonates with them, please do. I can read the first one. Why did you join Remake? Does anyone want to share?
Scared. I guess I'll share. I think the thing that that interests me most about the conversation or the movement on sustainable fashion is probably the policies. And it's interesting because that's not how it started. It's just kind of where my interest evolved into. I'm not a huge shopper anyway. I've had the same clothes in my closet for a very long time. And I do enjoy styling. I intern as a stylist, but I realize like maybe when we're talking about like how clothes are used and how they're being made, I think I really look at like the labor issues. And also it's, I think Natalie, you may have mentioned maybe environmental or so things like that are interesting to me. And also I'm taking an interest in energy right now, and I'm like, well, I'm sure there's a relation there. So I think I've enjoyed just being able to expand my thinking and way of thinking about and seeing fashion from a completely different perspective. And also just seeing some of the moves that Remake has made recently. It's very insightful and it's really great to see. And it's great to be here around other people, who are moving the conversation forward and contributing to this movement. So.
Also,
you're muted. I know you were saying something. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Erin. No, I was sharing. Well, thank you, Naomi, for sharing your intention for joining Remake. And the next question is, you sort of touched on this actually, like what aspect of the movement drew you in, and you're welcome to share if anybody else in the group wants to share, like what do you hope to solve, like as an ambassador or just in general, like what are the like what do you want to build or solve?
I'll answer this one. I'm still relatively new to the Remake community, but it is like so interesting to like see, like talk to you guys on Zoom calls and like talk to my friends, and like the education just really isn't there. Like I feel like if more people knew like the actual facts behind greenwashing and stuff like that, there really would be a change. But it's just trying to get those facts to the people in the right way. So I think for me, it's like Remake does so much like education, not only with ambassadors, but like trying to get like the public to become ambassadors and to learn more on their own. And that's like one of the main reasons why I joined as an ambassador in 2020.
Thanks, Allison. And Jessica, I see your hand up.
So to answer kind of the first two questions, I just joined as an ambassador in February of this year, but I've been following Remake for a while, probably since they started. And I think it was really in the Pay Up campaign and seeing the impact of the community and how effective that organization was, not only in the efforts to get people to pay, but in the policy shifts that have happened since then, really made me want to join in on the movement. But really just been drawn in by, like Allison was saying, and I think even Naomi touching on the educational aspect of just how Remake makes the information so accessible and approachable. And I've been interested in sustainable fashion since 2010 and looking for people and communities that share that same value. So having the resources that Remake provides and the network that is provided by that has been, super inspirational and helpful, and just wanting to build that community locally with the help of people who are also doing it really helps to feel like I'm not alone in the struggle.
Thank you, Jessica. And yeah, and I agree with what everyone shared. I know I have 3 other questions, and as y'all were talking, I was kind of thinking, if you could all kind of just like mentally note, like, think about like what your strengths and skills are, like, is it marketing, is it research, is it public speaking, or is it building relationships? And I think it will be helpful to kind of like talk about that again at during the second half of our workshop, because Natalie will dive more into like how to plan events. Also, the other questions about like what kind of event would you like to host in your community, with whom? Thinking about, I will be diving into that more, so I think we can revisit this question later. And also, like, I think it would be great to hear what kind of events you've all been thinking about, or what you'd like to host in your communities, whether it's virtual or in person. So I'll go to the next slide. Thank you all. All right, so who is your audience? So we know that like every city and town is different. If we had more time, I'd love to like go around and learn like where everybody lives, but just in the interest of time, maybe in the end. But Natalie and I are both in the DC region, so we know that the community in DC looks very different than New York City or the UK or Southeast Asia. So I know for us, we often say DC wasn't always or hasn't always been considered a fashionable city, and you know, however, like many people come to DC hoping to make the world and their communities a better place through like policy, for example. So we know that there's a place for ethical and sustainable fashion here. And we've learned over the past few years that there is, and there's definitely like a creative community that's growing here as well. So all that to say, every region has their own traits and charms, and it just takes a little bit of like, you know, like getting out there to do so. And if you can just take a moment, you can jot it down or think about it mentally. Who would or could you connect with about sustainable fashion where you live? Who might support your advocacy work with Remake? And who would you want to invite to your events? And then from this list, we can think about how we can create like a fashion ecosystem starting where we are. So next slide. So your fashion ecosystem can be made up of like-minded individuals who you want to become friends with. They can be people you want to organize and campaign with. They may be people who you know like can help amplify your advocacy work and your creative projects. Maybe they already have a platform. They may be people who you see as role models and you want to learn from, and maybe like find a way for them to like be a mentor to you. Or maybe they are people who are your loved ones and friends who care about you and support your interests. So we have here like a fashion ecosystem where we've kind of just defined for us the four main like categories. So we have our Remake community, the local fashion community, future supporters and advocates who exist outside of Remake and sustainable fashion, as well as friends and family. So just, you know, some helpful things to think about. How can I get connected with this community? How can I build relationships within this community? And how do I invite them to partner with me or attend my future programs or events? So we'll start with the Remake community. So Natalie and I often, like, because we're both community organizers, our mission is kind of like to convene other ambassadors together within our city. So you'll probably notice we'll speak from a community organizer lens during this workshop, but like I just want to like emphasize that ambassadors can get out of Remake whatever they put in. So you know, you might not be trying to like get other ambassadors together like we are, but maybe you are here to like because you know like you have access to Remake's wealth of advocacy resources and knowledge, and you want to learn so that you can better speak to like fast fashion to your communities. So I just want to like, we don't have to like go through each one, but here's just like a checklist of things that we really recommend that you like, if you haven't already, you do to get started with connecting. So definitely like joining the Remake Slack channel and Ambassador Hub. You can use the Ambassador Directory, which is in the Ambassador Resources folder, and you can also use the Ambassador Hub to see who lives near you. Now I know that, well, I don't know if Simone lives near me, but I know like, you know, I just learned somebody went to my alma mater. our alma mater. So you can also connect with your local community organizer if you happen to live somewhere that has a community hub. You can attend Remake calls, meetups, and other events like this one where we can connect with each other. We're a pretty small group. You can connect with ambassadors on social media and or exchange contact information. And you can also schedule coffee dates or meetups. For example, I participated in No New Gifts exchange that we did last summer. And I was paired with an ambassador who lives in Ohio, I believe. And after we exchanged gifts and we messaged each other on Slack, we thought it would be great to meet. So we did a 30-minute Zoom call. It was really nice. And we learned that we both kind of have a social work background. So that was that just a really nice way to connect with other people. And I think it's there. And I really can't stress enough how great Remake has been in helping me meet friends in the sustainable fashion space. And here are just a few examples of ways ambassadors have connected and collaborated on Remake events. So we'll explore this further. I'll just talk through each one really quick. Natalie shared earlier that we did a vision board social with the DC community, and we did it we hosted it on her rooftop. It was really nice, and we just while we were cutting, we did it with actual magazines and scissors and glue. It was really, really fun, and just beautiful too, because it was over the summer and we were able to see the sunset. But I really enjoyed that, and that was a great way to get to know the other people in DC. We also, as Natalie shared, we went to Philadelphia for the Philadelphia Hub's first ambassador event that they hosted and organized, and it was really cool. They planned this whole itinerary. Emily Henry, she's one of the community organizers who works with Ash, and we started with brunch, and we visited small sustainable businesses, and we spoke with there were actually designers presenting to us about their business, and it was really cool. And we also visited I believe it was United by Blue, if you're familiar, but it's a sustainable fashion, they sell sustainable apparel. But yeah, it was nice, and we just spent the day there. Natalie and I went up by bus, but that was a great cross-hub collaboration that happened. We've done clothing swaps, book club. Again, Natalie spoke to that as well, where community organizers in Vancouver, Seattle, and DC work together to organize a weekly reading and reflections program centered around Consumed by Aja Barber. And we recently wrapped up The Day the World Stopped Shopping by J.D. McKinnon. And those have been really nice to read people's reflections on the Ambassador Slack channel. We have our own channel just for the book club if anyone wants to join. Workshops, Natalie will talk about those more, but you can, as you've seen, Remake does plant workshops. We've done natural dye workshops. There's Aware Your Values workshop, which I think a lot of you might really be interested in hosting, because that's a great one to speak more about labor issues and environmental issues, and a good way to interactively engage people who are in the room with you about this topic. And finally, Remake has meetup groups as well. We have meetup groups about entrepreneurship, people who are interested in vintage or thrifting, people who are interested in advocacy, as well as content creation. So, all right, so the second group that I'd like to speak about is the local fashion community. So to widen our outreach and share Remake's mission, it's important to build relationships with people who are already in this space and doing similar work. So we suggest thinking about how you discover local events and people related to fashion and creating a resources and contact sheet. We'll share a template with you all in the chat. I believe Natalie will drop it in. But in addition to this contact sheet, we also recommend the following tips. Natalie, if you can go on the next slide. Thank you. I won't go through each one, but like here's like a checklist of things that you can do to like start getting connected with your community. Again, I want to emphasize using the Remake network to learn more about your city or region. If you move someplace, for example, and you want to get connected, there might be somebody else in the Remake community who knows more about what's going on. So maybe they can direct you to like vintage and secondhand shops, or people who you know, like they can be a resource for you to get connected with people who might share your interests. We encourage just like getting, you know, starting by like, we encourage you to start by like researching like different groups. Google Eventbrite is helpful for finding out what events are happening related to sustainable fashion. You just type in a few keywords. And lastly, I want to emphasize just like the importance of like supporting other organizations as well, like in the local fashion community. You know, we believe it's important to build trust and support other individuals and groups, because essentially like we all care about the same thing, right? Like if you meet people who are also like doing clothing swaps, or if you meet an organization that's also, for example, like maybe there's a fashion revolution group in your community. So just connecting with them and building relationships opens up opportunities for collaboration and casting a wider net. So I leave this list here, but I think it will be more helpful for me to kind of just share a case study of two communities that we've built a relationship with in DC, like, and this is like 4 years in the making. Right. So DCSFC stands for the DC Sustainable Fashion Collective. And then Tribute is a local like ethical fashion and lifestyle shop, like very like boutique, like curated space. They have small brands from all around the world, and they also do a lot of like creative community events. One of their founders majored in fashion studies at Parsons, and she comes from a very like artistic and like kind of like a museum fashion history lens. So this started in April 2018. Like I said, just doing some Google searching, I wanted to find local Fashion Revolution Week events in DC. And I came across the DC Sustainable Fashion Collective's like Fashion Revolution Week series. So I went to American University and attended the True Cost film screening and panel there. And after that, I was like, that was my first time watching True Cost. So I was like, this is amazing. And I didn't talk to anybody. I was really shy. And I was like, I don't know anybody here. So all I did was just like sit there. I took notes about like who the panelists were and kept them like in my journal about sustainable fashion. And I read up on the founders of the DC Sustainable Fashion Collective, and I followed them on Instagram. So then that's how I learned about this big fashion conference that they were hosting at the George Washington University Textile Museum. So that was in September 2018. And this was like the first sustainable fashion conference in DC. So it was like a big deal. And they invited speakers from around the US. And that was like a whole day event. And I attended that, and it was really amazing as well. And again, I learned more about sustainable fashion and just like all the different, they had like different like topics, and I believe like 4 or 5 panels, but like just like learning about like different aspects of it, like more than I knew before. So from there, I really like connected with one of the founders who was opening up Tribute. I just like, she resonated with me the most. So I tried to like read up on her and follow her. And that's where, you know, I met her when I visited her pop-up when her shop first opened. And I just like told her about myself and told her like why I was there, how I learned about them. And again, I work in a completely different industry, and I wasn't there to like promote her shop, or I wasn't a journalist, but I think just putting myself out there was helpful. And since then, I've continued to build a relationship, and she's seen me attend events. So now, like, you know, the DC Sustainable Fashion Collective, like, they support remakes projects we've done. Natalie, if you can go to the next slide. We've done, so yeah, here's some photos. So this is from my Instagram. This is on the left is the, from the fashion conference in 2018. And then in the second one is when I visited their shop, and I just wrote about it on my Instagram, and they like commented and they're like, thanks for coming. And then like this one in 2021, this was last year, Natalie and I attended one of their film screenings. This is Tribute, the small like ethical lifestyle shop that I talked about. And then you know, here, actually Laurel, this is Laurel here. She's one of our ambassadors and our advocacy manager. We attended another film together last year that Tribute hosted. So, oops, I just realized I shared the same photo. But anyways, that's just like me sharing that I kind of like just like fangirled over them, and now like they support us as well. And we've collaborated on film screenings together, and the Good Map together, which is kind of like a curated list of like sustainable and ethical shops and restaurants in DC. So finally, I'll be really quick. This is Future Supporters and Advocates, the third community that we want to highlight in the ecosystem. And it's just about how you bring people who currently fall outside of the fashion movement. So they may share similar values, but they're focusing on something completely. It might be like environmental justice as a whole. It could be something else. So, you know, I think it's helpful to think about that, especially if it applies to you. Maybe there isn't a DC sustainable fashion like group or like we have, but maybe you have an organization like climate classes, and I'll talk about them in the next slide. So climate classes, they are a growing local community that empowers individuals to address climate change by learning and sharing sustainable life skills together. So they do a lot of educational workshops about like sustainable energy, green energy, and like agriculture as well. And they were introduced to us by a mutual friend, and they wanted to host events centered around sustainable fashion, but they didn't really know how to get started. So we collaborated with them on a virtual panel about the state of sustainable fashion. And then like from there, just continue to maintain that relationship. Again, liking each other's posts, sharing, trying to attend events if we can, like helping amplify our messages. And then they reached out to us again last year to collaborate on a fashion event this fall. And we're actually going to be hosting it at the George Washington University Textile Museum. And we planned for it to be like this bigger event with a lot of people in the community. So some, you know, just an example of something small and like collaborating with an organization that isn't really like about fashion, but they care about sustainability. Okay. So I shared like earlier how you can create a resources and contact sheet just to kind of like when you're planning to host an event, like this is like something you can use to think about like people you can partner with or venues where you can host events at. So this is just an example like outreach like list that the DC community has. It's very specific, but just like an example of what it could look like in your community. I mentioned a textile museum, so a museum, maybe a library, maybe a student-led like sustainable fashion club. Like this is from a community organizer lens, but you know, trying to like reach students as well, right? But if that's something you want to do, like that's what ambassadors are for too. Like we are like advocates. So if you want to like partner with like local universities, that's like really great like place to look. Sometimes like professors or teachers might be interested in having somebody speak about sustainable fashion in their classrooms. You can look at like people who host workshops in natural dyes or like upcycling. We mentioned looking at other local rights grassroots or local human rights grassroots organizations and climate advocacy organizations to partner with. And also actually the one place where I think Natalie and I have been most successful is when we attend events. We meet people who like are also attending those events, and we like become friends with them, like, you know, quite friends, but we're, you know, we share our interests, and we it actually turns into friendships, and we've met a lot of great people through events as well, and have like met up with them for like coffee after attending like a film screening, for example. So
I'm gonna talk a little bit about the last bucket of the fashion ecosystem that Risa and I put together. So Risa did an awesome job talking about the audiences that you may not have a relationship with yet, or people that you want to build relationship and community with. And with that, connect with them, partner with them on future events, invite them to your events, attend their events, and so on. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the people that you already have relationships with and the people that you already know, and how you can talk to them about Remake and maybe invite them to your events if you're hosting them. So the first thing that I've found helpful at hosting Remake events, both as an ambassador and a community organizer, is sending personalized invitations. So, you know, texting a friend or sending an email rather than just a mass text or a mass Facebook event invite. I feel like a personalized invitation goes a long way, and people I think respond better when you personally invite them. And then that kind of goes into the second thing I'm going to talk about. So why Remake? So when you're talking to your friends and family about Remake events that you're hosting, if you're inviting them, like, I find it very helpful to let them know why Remake's important to you. Kind of the questions that Risa was asking earlier, like, why did you join? What is your intention? What is your intention of this event? What do you want them to get out of it? So kind of letting them know that, I think, is really helpful when writing those personalized invitations. And then also another thing I found really cool about hosting Remake events, especially if they're virtual, is being able to connect with friends from the past. So the first Remake event I ever hosted was last year. I did a virtual film screening over Zoom, and I was able to connect with some of my friends from high school that live in different states, and a few of them came. One of my friends joined from Japan, which was super cool. So being able to connect with them, it was just a good way to also just like rebuild some friendships that I'd lost over the years. So I definitely recommend that if you're hosting a virtual event. And then also letting them know that they can donate even if they can't attend. So, you know, this goes back to the intention of the event. Some events that we host are specifically fundraisers, but a lot of the time they aren't. They might be more educational events or a DIY workshop, something like that. But we always like to remind people that we really welcome donations to Remake, that the work Remake does is so important, and donations are really necessary to kind of fuel what we do. So for our fundraiser, for example, we invited a few of our family members who couldn't attend, but they still donated even though they didn't come in person. So that was really just like a good thing to have. So let people know they can still donate. And then the last thing I want to talk about with this is, you know, stepping outside your comfort zone and maybe inviting peers that aren't your close friends or your family. So when Risa and I hosted an event in April, I invited my coworkers, and I'd never really talked to my coworkers about Remake. They didn't know that I was involved in it. They didn't know that I was passionate about this, but I decided to step out of my comfort zone and tell them about it. And it was definitely, I was a little nervous about it, but they received it really well. They attended the event. They really enjoyed it. And it was great because they weren't really aware of the issue. So I was able to educate them about it. And they also got to learn another part of me that they didn't see at work. So if there's maybe people that are kind of, you know, your peers that you maybe haven't thought about talking with them about Remake, I definitely recommend reaching out to them if you're hosting an event. The next thing, so before I get into this, I just wanted to pause for a moment. So we just went over the 4 different fashion parts of the fashion ecosystem that we've seen. And now I'm just going to get into some like little pieces of advice that we've gotten from hosting events that we wanted to share, and then also walk through kind of how to host an event from start to finish. But before I do that, I just wanted to stop for a moment so we could reflect and ask the question, if you've hosted a Remake event before, who have you invited? How have you grown your fashion ecosystem in your community? So I'm not sure if anyone wants to share, or if you just want to keep it to yourselves or write it down. I'll give it a moment. If you do want to share, please feel free to speak. If not, we can also just move on, but I'll give it a second.
If I can step in for a second, Natalie, I can talk a little bit about how I go about like inviting certain people to events or just like promoting things that I'm doing on behalf of Remake. And I think one that you guys didn't necessarily touch too much on is like the social media side of things and using our platforms, on Instagram or Twitter to really like advertise and push our events. I don't have a crazy following, but I'm trying to become more authentic and like show my true self on Instagram. So like hosting Instagram lives, I think is a really great way to like open the door to the public and like your audience of people that maybe aren't super familiar with sustainability and what Remake does, but just like putting it out there to other people like outside the space on your social media, I think is a cool way to get people involved too.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Erin. I definitely agree. I think I really don't have a big social media following. That's something I'm working on, but creating content, I think, is a great way, like you said, to reach people. It's also you're able to do virtually, so you can reach a lot more people than you can in an in-person event. Also, it's a great tool for marketing events. And like Riza mentioned, connecting with people, we've DM'd a bunch of people on Instagram, like asking if we could, maybe partner with them or get to know them better. So I agree, Erin, a lot that social media is super great tool and really useful. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm gonna move to the next slide. So this is just one thing that we thought, kind of just reflecting on the events we've hosted and kind of where like things that we would do differently, things that we thought went well. So the first thing that I just wanted to point out was what we've seen with hosting different types of events is we found that it's helpful to keep it simple. There's so much to talk about when it comes to sustainable fashion and the issues within fast fashion. So first, this goes back to kind of what Riza was saying. We think about the audience, who's going to be at the event. Are they going to be all Remake ambassadors? Are they going to be sustainable fashion people? Are they going to be labor policy experts? Are they just going to be friends and family? So thinking about the audience, and that kind of helps shape the intention of the event. So if they're all Remake ambassadors, they might already know about things like the Pay Up campaign. But if they're your friends and family who might not know about sustainable fashion, your intention might be a little different. So regardless of what your event is or what the intention is or the audience, we find it really helpful to think of one overarching theme and then have a few sub themes. So I'm just put an example on the slide, but when Riza, Victoria, and I hosted a Wear Your Values workshop, we did something kind of similar to what's on the slide. We had this idea of talking about fashion that respects people, and we gave some background because most of our audience were not ambassadors and they weren't really aware of some of the issues within the fashion industry. So we gave some background, then we talked about solutions, SB62. This was kind of timely because this was last summer, so the Bangladesh Accord had just expired. We talked about that. We talked about how people could get involved and write emails and things like that. And then if you have time or if you think it would fit well with your audience, you could try to maybe go one step further. And we talked about linking feminism to fashion and what that looks like. So this is just kind of one example, but it can be like in the past when I've hosted stuff, I have like pages and pages of notes and I only get to like the first 2 pages just because it's hard to narrow it down. And especially if your event's only an hour and a half. So we find this model really helpful. The last little point I'm going to talk about is, and this is just kind of what Riza and I have seen from hosting a few events, is the importance of creating a judgment-free zone. So I bring this up because a film screening that Riza and I hosted in April, we hosted this in person, which I'll talk about next. My friend came up to me and when he was signing in, and he said, "Natalie, I'm so embarrassed to attend this event because I'm dressed head to toe in fast fashion." And that really resonated with me because, you know, I can definitely relate to that because a lot of the time I'm dressed head to toe in fast fashion. And, you know, we really think it's important that we create events that don't shame people. They don't make people feel guilty for the purchases they've made, you know, that our events are really about education and spreading awareness and helping people just make little changes in their daily life or their purchasing habits, and kind of remembering that people are on different stages of their sustainable fashion journeys. You know, people might have, like Riza, have known about this for 5-6 years, been thinking about this. Some people might be the first time that they thought about this, is attending this event, or they might have not been aware. So we definitely think that's helpful. And that kind of also goes back again to what your intention is, who your audience is, but just kind of having that idea of a judgment-free zone in the back of your mind when you're running these events. So the last slide is just kind of A to Z of how to create events. So I'm just going to go through this relatively quickly because it's already 7:50. So this is kind of just step one. You know, you have an event idea, and then once you pick your intention and audience, you kind of do the logistics. So you pick a date. If you're working with others, we recommend meeting weekly or bi-weekly, depending how long you have in the planning of your event. You draft an event one-pager, which Riza and I will share that with you after. It's basically just kind of goes over what your event will look like, the outline of the event, the agenda, and this is really helpful to send around to potential partners, venues, things like that. You create a budget and then you find a venue. We definitely recommend looking for donated spaces. We hosted a film screening at a local bookstore. And we actually found them through our fashion ecosystem, working with climate classes. We found them and we had a call with them and decided to partner with them. And they were really great and awesome. And then we recommend creating a graphic, an Eventbrite, completing Remake's event form, sending invites to all the people we just talked about in our fashion ecosystem, prepping your event materials, reaching out to Remake if you want to get some Remake collateral. You can make signs on Canva and print them, and then arriving early. We really recommend putting out a sign-up sheet so you can keep track of who attended, and also you can get their emails if they're interested in learning more. And then we also, going back to the donations, putting out a donation page so people can donate to Remake if they want, kind of saying where your donation goes, and then having a box with maybe some cash or a Venmo sign printed so people can Venmo, or if they do cash, you have change. And then take pictures and photos are really helpful for your future events, for advertising on social media. And then we recommend making it interactive. For this film screening, we did a raffle and we bought a book from the bookstore that we partnered with, and we raffled it off along with a few other things. So that was a really fun way to make it interactive. And then lastly, filling out Remake's post-event form. And then we also really recommend sending a post-event thank you email to all the people who came to the event, who filled in the sign-in sheet. And in that email, which we'll send a template around to everyone, talking about what Remake is, where they can donate to Remake, and then also directing them to the ambassador application if they're interested in joining. So that is just a quick overview. We'll send these slides around to everyone, as well as the resources we've talked about. And then also we'll send around this information. So no need to take notes or anything on this, but these are just some helpful tools. And I know we only have about 6 minutes, but I'm gonna leave it there if anyone has questions or comments or want to have an open discussion.
Yeah, I have a question. It was mentioned earlier in the presentation, just kind of going back to the ambassadors who care a lot about the environmental issues. Like, how would I connect with ambassadors like that?
go ahead.
We recommend using the hub. Is that what you're gonna share?
Go ahead. I was gonna say the same thing, Riza.
Yeah. I believe, actually, I'm not 100% sure if there is a group for environmental. I think there is, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at the, there's different selections in the hub, and if you kind of put in the ones that are of interest to you, you'll find those people that also check those boxes, and see who's in your community in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the first tab, community, it's filtered by region and also interest. So
Okay.
I do see a climate justice group.
Okay.
And also the Slack channel, that's another great way to reach out.
Also, Miranda, I see your question in the chat. Has anyone done short classroom presentations for elementary schools, or would that be in the hub? Riza and I have done presentations to high school and college age students, but not elementary. But I think, oh, go ahead, Riza.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry, I just wanted to add, yes, we have spoken to high school and college students. There is actually an ambassador in DC who hosted a presentation for elementary age students up to middle school, and she did a small workshop. It was for a Girl Scouts troop, but she's planning to host sustainable fashion workshops to classrooms as well. But she's actually a Girl Scout who is planning to raise awareness in her community in Northern Virginia. And she, you know, she could probably speak more to this, and I'll probably share this with everyone in the interest of time. She has like a little blurb that she sent me that I told her like I could share with everybody in case there was a question about outreach to younger students. So actually, let me drop this in the chat, but she like just, I think she'd be a great resource because she has worked with that age group.
Yeah, and we can send around too in the list of materials our presentation. And like you mentioned, it can be tweaked to a different audience. It's just a kind of basic overview of Remake and kind of the work that we do. So we can definitely include that. Does anyone else have any other questions? I know it's almost 8.
I do have a question quickly.
Yeah.
Just about as things are starting to open again and we're actually able to have like in-person events, could you give us some tips for those events that we still plan on hosting virtually? Like I know both yourself and Riza have planned events that you guys have done over Zoom, and do you have any tips on just like how to get people engaged and how to like outreach to people when you're planning to do something virtually?
Yeah, I can speak real quickly to a film screening because that's one of the events I held virtually. So I think that's a really good one to hold virtually. We also actually held it in person too, and I liked both, but I thought the virtual one was surprisingly more intimate than the in-person, which you kind of would think the opposite. But I really liked hosting I did remakes, Made in America and Made in Sri Lanka films, and then talked about the similarities and differences. So I think that's a really good one. And it was engaging, I felt, because people could like talk and you can see the movie on the computer. It didn't really make a difference if it was in person or virtually. And we had discussion questions, and you could even do breakout rooms, things like that. We also did a Wear Your Values workshop virtually, which was also good. I think that one, we kind of tried to make it interactive too, and we had a raffle as well. We really like raffles. We raffled off a Remake tote bag that Riza naturally dyed. So we did that. So maybe something like that too is helpful, since it is virtually, kind of breaking down those virtual barriers by doing things like raffles or stuff that's engaging. I'm not sure, Riza, if you have anything else to speak to with that.
No, I agree with everything you said. And actually, this is kind of related to like another type of event you can do for like fundraising as well as and to raise awareness. If any of you are like makers, so I've seen some people do like auctioning where they make something and use it as, you can either auction it off and like raise money that way, like maybe like $1 or $5 or $10 gets you a raffle, and that money could go to Remake, or you could also, like Natalie mentioned, you can use that for your event to kind of like have a prize without having to spend a lot of money on it, but something creative and like really like you know, like that, like a way to show your values as well.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments before we announce the raffle winner?
Well, this is really great. I think the slide deck is going to be super helpful. We'll definitely have it in the hub so that you can access it under the leadership skills workshops, because there's great tools that you have shared, and even the templates are fabulous. I loved the ecosystem that you described, because I think it really does dictate like who the audience is for what it goes back to, you know, then what is the event and who is it for? So I think that's such a key slide, and it really is a great starting point for like what kind of event, whether it's mending or if it's something more about labor rights or the environment, and like who you plan to invite. And one thing that we haven't stressed enough is, you know, all of you can, you know, co-lead something. We've done some things in New York where, you know, teams got together to create events. So, you know, you don't have to do it on your own for the first time. I think it's actually really fun to meet with someone and then plan these things together, as Riza and Natalie have just shared the fun they've had in doing all of this.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, definitely. We've learned a lot from hosting some events, and it's not easy sometimes, like especially doing them in person. We found difficulties with trying to get a donated space, or like just the ins and outs of working with other people and partners and things like that. So we're learning a lot, and it's just great, like personal, professional development and things like that. So if you all have any, I'll put this slide on, if you want to reach out to us personally, we'd love to answer any questions, or if you want to talk through an event idea you have or something, we're totally here to help. And yeah, thank you so much for joining.
I just want to add as well real quick to that, like real quick, like Natalie and I met through an event as well. Like she was part of, I think when she had joined Remake DC, we were taking a break because we were really tired and burnt out. And that was like right before the elections, and it was a big year, heavy year. So that's when, around the time Natalie joined. So it had actually been quiet for a while. We were like resting. And so our first meetup was when Natalie wanted to collaborate on an event. So that was really, you know, that was special. And we didn't really touch on this, but I think another part about that's like you'll find when you're collaborating with others on events is like we all have different skills. So you know, there's things like I'm not as strong at that Natalie like compliments. So I think like it can be scary to like host an event. Like for me, I probably like I wasn't comfortable doing like a virtual panel or film screening on my own. I wanted to do it with others. So we're more than happy. Like if you meet people in this group, you know, if you all want to get together, or like, don't be afraid to like reach out to the Slack channel as well. I think people would be willing to like work on something together. And you can start with virtual because that's an easier way to connect if you don't have anyone locally.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm quickly going to say the winner is Miriam. You're the winner of the raffle. So we will send you the gift card information. And yeah, that is all we have. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm reading everyone's messages. I'm glad that was helpful. And we will send around all this information and the templates and everything.
Thank you, Natalie and Riza and everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. And you'll find all of this great information in the hub.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.